Hi, y'all. Welcome to Trend Forecasting. Today we are going to go over Chapter 6, which is all about world cultures. Really important, as always, to read the chapter after the lecture to be able to do the homework assignment. All right, so again, this is in Fashion Forecasting, the 5th edition. And it's part 2 of the book, which is Forecasting Influences. And it's Chapter 6, World Cultures. Couple of objectives after reading this chapter. You should be able to identify traditional and emerging design capitals, recognizing significant cultural dress items from different countries. You should understand the influence of cultural dress on high fashion. You should also be able to distinguish between couture and ready-to-wear fashion. What is the difference? Why is that important? And also know the sources of international fashion innovation off the runways. All right, so let's talk about some major fashion capitals. Number one, probably the most common that comes to mind, is Paris. This is where haute couture is rooted. Okay, these haute couture are one-of-a-kind showpieces made by skilled dressmakers for a particular client with a focus on artistry and workmanship. So anything that is labeled haute couture has to be essentially deemed haute couture by French fashion officials. And they typically require a certain level of artist and workmanship, whether that be it all be done by hand, beading, lace works, that kind of stuff. So essentially, Paris is the hub for haute couture. That's where it was born, that's where it's created, and that is who upholds the standard of haute couture. Today, the haute couture industry is overseen by the Chambre Syndicale de la Haute Couture, one of the 3 divisions of the Federation of Haute Couture de la Mode, so French Fashion Governing Board. So there's essentially a board that has a certain division that is dedicated to making sure that what is being said is haute couture is actually haute couture and living up to the standards. Something that has come out of a major fashion capital like Paris is the Breton striped shirt, also known as a mariniere shirt. It is a knitted pullover with bold horizontal navy and white stripes. And it's typically identifiable in nautical significance. We see that a lot in boatwear. We see it a lot on, nautical inspired fashion. Another important fashion capital is New York. Okay, during World War II, American fashion came to its own as a center of sportswear design. American sportswear focused on changing lifestyles of women. So officially, with sportswear, we were, giving women freedom to move, essentially, and not being corseted up and not being uncomfortable, and giving them actual real clothes that they could use for their everyday life. Claire McCardell, American designer of the 1940s, is credited for offering women a more casual, active, and less constricted view of what a modern woman should wear. So with New York becoming the center of sportswear design, it essentially gave the world a new perspective on how women should dress, and how modern women should be able to be free, to be casual and comfortable in their wear. New York Fashion Week dates back to the first press week held at the Plaza Hotel in 1943, and it was organized by the fashion publicist Eleanor Lambert. Today, we know New York for its American sportswear that has urban edge. So sportswear not only has given women casual and active, type of garments to be able to wear in everyday life, but it has now gone even further to having some sort of an edge, an urban edge to be specific, and New York is known for that. When we talk about Milan, it's a very iconic fashion capital. It's home of Italy's ready-to-wear fashion since 1972. Italian fashion developed from a tradition of fine fabrics, okay, leather from Tuscany, fine fabrics from the Prato regions, Como, Biella. They are known for, the level and quality of fabrics and materials that they use in their products and they're ready to wear. Their craftsmanship with those materials are kind of second to none. So very, very important part of Milan's identity. Italian designers became known for resort wear, also known as cruise wear. So they also added even in a new category of fashion and runaway fashion. So we do see resort kind of at the beginning of the year. And this is a collection of lightweight casual clothing that was originally intended to be worn on vacations, taken in a warm climate after Christmas, but now has been known to be kind of seasonless fashion that can be worn year round. So Italy in total is known for high quality textiles, original patterns and textiles, and especially leather goods. London is another fashion capital that you should know of. It is British fashion tends to dominate when the accent is on useful fashion and translation of street fashion. So they're very cutting edge. They've always kind of gone against the grain, against what is popular, against what the mass majority of people are adopting. And then late 1960s, when young people rebelled against the repressive English class system, they expressed themselves through music and clothing. This was called the mod subculture, and had a huge influence from a certain street in London, which was Carnaby Street, and a couple of boutiques called Mary Quaint and the Biba Boutique had influenced a bunch of these young adolescents that were rebelling from being proper and sophisticated. They wanted to kind of change the way that people saw fashion and dress. And these boutiques had a really big influence on that. Mary Quaint and Biba Boutique can still be observed in contemporary fashion. So you can still see them in London and they still produce garments. One of the most famous fashion schools is the British fashion school, Central St. Martin's. It continues to graduate designers known for creating ironic, hip, and radical fashion. So London is known as just being against the grain, translating street fashion, what they see on the street, into mass production, and a huge emphasis on youthful fashion. Some emerging fashion capitals. So these are just as important as, the major fashion capitals. These are countries or capitals that are really bringing a new vision, a new perspective, that are changing the way that we see fashion. The first is Africa, specifically Johannesburg. Johannesburg is the home of South African Fashion Week, and this was established in 1997, so fairly recently. Africa, as we know, is a diverse continent, and one item of dress that is common across the continent is lapa, also known as a peg or a wrapper, a rectangular swath of fabric that is draped horizontally around the waist and fastened to using a process of folding and knotting can differ according to the wearer's size, personal preference, or culture. So this is an example of cultural dress that will be helpful for your homework this week. Understanding what cultures and what dress means something to that culture and why people wear that item is really important. Designers typically have looked to Africa for inspiration for many, many years, with color palette inspiration, with design, with pattern inspiration and textiles. A lot of workmanship in their craftsmanship is, some of the top tier and things that people have not been able to recreate with machinery. It's really down to like the person actually doing it by hand. And a couple of designers have always looked at Africa for inspiration, and a couple of those are Yves Saint Laurent and Ralph Lauren. Another emerging fashion capital is Asia and Tokyo. Asia and Tokyo specifically. One of their cultural dresses is a kimono, which is a floor-length robe worn by both men and women. It's typically wrapped left over right around the body and is assembled from 7 pieces. So there's 2 body panels, 2 sleeves, 2 overlaps, and a collar that are cut from a single bolt of cloth, which is really incredible. Japanese designers are typically known for their use of high-tech fabric and finishes and unusual cuts and wrapping effects. So they're known for using innovative fabrics and also interesting proportions. So interesting cuts in their garments. Not using traditional cuts, but using cuts that kind of elongate stuff or make something bigger than it's supposed to be, that really catch the eye. Japan is also especially known for its streetwear, which you should know from this class. with an emphasis on logo t-shirts, baseball caps, sneakers, trainers, and hoodies, and typically has a very tightly controlled distribution in limited quantities through select channels such as company-owned stores. So that's why you'll see a lot of Japanese people traveling to find luxury goods that are in high demand, because typically they only get access to certain quantities through the company-owned stores. Another emerging fashion capital in Asia is Seoul. So this is Seoul is known for traditional Korean clothing for men and women. A cultural dress that Seoul, or that Seoul, Korea is known for, is the hanbok, which consists of a jacket or a jagori, and men's pants or baj, women's skirts or a chima, or a coat called po. Seoul's first fashion week was held in 2015 and has become known for showing young commercial clothing. So Korea in general is known for celebrating young emerging designers, which is really fun and interesting to know. And they celebrate interesting and different perspective on dress and commercial clothing. So they're not really one of a kind pieces or, highly crafted pieces, but it's commercial clothing that appeals to a large audience, but is typically comes from a younger perspective. Another emerging fashion capital in Asia is Shanghai. So Shanghai has held its own fashion week twice yearly since 2001. So also fairly new, but they are doing it, and they're doing it twice a year. A cultural dress item from Shanghai is the Chengguoxiang. It's also known as a Qiupao. It is a straight, close-fitting, short or knee-length dress with high neck, short sleeves, and a thigh-high slit skirt. There was a exhibition in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in 2015 that was all about China, and it was called Through the Looking Glass, and it exposed China's cultural dress. And this exhibit broke attendance records for every single exhibit that was fashion focused at the Met. And this really raised the profile of Chinese designers. I think at this point, they were going unnoticed and, not as respected as they should be. And because the Met decided to highlight these designers, I think America as a whole really took note of how influential and how important these Chinese designers are, and how we need to appreciate what they're doing. Another emerging fashion capital in Australia is Sydney. A cultural dress item in Australia, believe it or not, is an Ugg boot. Ugg boots, not to be confused with the brand Ugg. It's a generic term for sheepskin boots with fleece attached. So obviously Ugg has taken the Ugg boot and made it a modern take on the Ugg boots. But traditionally that belongs to Australia. Because of its climate and many beaches, Australia is home to several major surfwear brands, so very similar to Orange County. Surfwear features items such as tank tops, t-shirts, rash guards, board shorts, rubber sandals, caps, sunglasses, and jackets. It's a very specific niche of ready-to-wear and commercial garmentry, and it appeals to a specific demographic of people. Board shorts or boardies are another cultural dress that come from Australia, and they are made from lightweight, durable, fast-drying fabric used in yachting, and have a plain design with a wide waistband or drawstring closure at the waist, a hem that just falls above the knee, and may include a pocket for wax and a flat Velcro front closure. So most often used in the water and for surfing. An emerging fashion capital in Eastern Europe is St. Petersburg or Moscow. Russia was a major source of inspiration for Yves Saint Laurent in his ballet Russia's opera haute couture collection from fall winter 1976-1977. The traditional Russian dress includes the rubaka. I don't know if I'd say that right, rubaka, or it's a blouse which is typically made of linen or hemp. So you can see that here on the right side. Another emerging fashion capital in Western Europe is Antwerp. In the late 80s, Belgium became home to the fashion's most famous collective, and that's the Antwerp Six. The Antwerp Six work is categorized by oversized proportions, combined with structural cuts and tailoring and deconstructed mode. Each member of this collective went on to establish a career for themselves while experiencing various degrees of success. So this was a very exclusive group of designers that really set the tone for this fashion capital and essentially put Belgium on the map. Other designers who were contemporaries of Work 6 include Martin Margiela, which is huge, who founded Maison Margiela, Raf Simons, so we know is a creative director of women's wear for Dior, and has also created his own menswear line. When we talk about North America, Mexico City is an emerging fashion capital. The modern Mexican fashion industry is in its growth phase, so it's in a really exciting phase of the process. It's thanks to an growing upper class and tourists that have strong purchasing power. So without these people, we struggle to have an emerging fashion capital because there has to be people that appreciate fashion and how much things cost and are willing to purchase them, right? A cultural dress item for Mexico is an indigenous dress that it includes a hupil, a sleeveless tunic that is traditionally hand woven on a backstrap loom. So a modern interpretation of this is here on the right. Another emerging fashion capital in North America is Montreal. Montreal has the third largest apparel manufacturing industry in North America after LA and New York. Montreal has a thriving local designer scene because of the city's affordable cost of living, low commercial rents, and the extremely collaborative design community. Traditional dress from the province of Quebec consists of the capote, or a blanket coat. It's a long coat with a hood that was originally made out of wool blankets, a colorful finger woven sash, and tall moccasins. In South America, we can pinpoint Sao Paulo in Brazil as one of its emerging fashion capitals. Brazil is the 5th largest nation in the world and has a diverse cultural background. Sao Paulo Fashion Week was founded in 1986 and is currently the biggest fashion event in Latin America and 5th largest in the world. The DuPont Corporation has made Lycra spandex in Sao Paulo since 1975, which is huge. That is the hub of where we make this textile. Starting in 1990s, brands there began using Lycra branded flat fabrics to produce distinctly Brazilian garments. Things that were close to the skin, body hugging, breathable as well because of the climate. These garments included pants, dresses, tops, shorts, bodysuits that were tightly fitted and showed off the wearer's body. So here are some fashion weeks, okay? Fashion off the runway. So fashion weeks, we typically have ready to wear, men's ready to wear, and couture. So those are the 3 categories. And when we talk about fashion off the runway, we see them in showrooms, boutiques, trade shows, regional markets, and fashion neighborhoods. All right, that's the end of chapter 6. It's really important that you read this chapter to be able to complete the homework assignments this week. Thank you guys. Have a great day.